Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're a graduation level student staring down a massive syllabus on public finance or economics, you have literally landed in the exact right place. Today, we are going to completely decode the massive, somewhat intimidating machinery of Indian taxation. We're taking that giant wall of fiscal data and turning it into a clear mental map so you can confidently breeze into your exams. We're going to trace the money all the way from the billions moving at the very top levels of government right down to the tax you pay on a simple packet of biscuits.
To really get this system, we first got to appreciate the sheer scale of the Indian economy. Get this. For the 2025-26 financial accounts, total government revenue hit a staggering 33,85,982 crore rupees. I mean, wow. That is an absolute mountain of capital needed to run the country, build infrastructure, and fund public services. But you gotta wonder, where exactly does this mountain of money actually come from? Well, here is our roadmap for today. Number 1, how the government earns. Number 2, the great tax split. Number 3, indirect taxes unpacked. And finally, number 4, the direct versus indirect showdown.
Okay, let's dive right into part 1, how the government earns, breaking down the trillions.
So out of that massive 33 lakh core figure, the government basically has three main buckets of income. The vast majority, as you'd probably guess, is tax revenue, sitting at over 26 lakh crore. This covers your everyday income tax, corporate tax, and GST. Then we have non-tax revenue at roughly 6.78 lakh crore. Think of fees, fines, and profits from public sector companies for this one. But notice that third, tiny bucket at the top, non-debt capital receipts, or NDCR, sitting at 83,757 crore. It's small, sure, only about 3% of total receipts, but it is absolutely crucial for fiscal management. Let's actually break down that NDCR bucket a bit more because examiners absolutely love testing this concept. Non-debt capital receipts are essentially capital inflows that do not involve borrowing, meaning they don't create any future repayment obligations. Think of it like this. If you need cash, you could take a bank loan, right? That's debt. Or you could sell off an old piece of furniture, or finally get back that cash you lent to your friend last semester. That is NDCR. It's cash in hand, but you don't owe the bank a single dime. For the government, this happens mostly through the recovery of loans given to states, disinvestment, which is just selling shares in government-owned companies, and other miscellaneous asset sales. It's super important because it funds capital expenditure without making the national debt burden any heavier.
Moving on to part 2, the great tax split, direct versus indirect.
Now, what's genuinely fascinating here is the ratio. Within the total tax collections, direct taxes, like income and corporate tax, make up 58.5%. Indirect taxes, like GST, make up 40.8%. And, this split is actually a huge win for the progressivity and fairness of the Indian tax system. Because direct taxes, specifically non-corporate direct taxes, dominate the split, it points to a much healthier system, one where taxation is tied closely to actual income and profitability rather than just what people consume on a daily basis.
But hang on a second. If direct taxes are bringing in the lion's share of revenue, it begs a massive, completely myth-busting question. Who actually pays income tax in India? You'd probably assume a pretty huge chunk of the population is chipping in, right? Let's do a quick reality check. The demographic funnel of Indian taxation perfectly illustrates this drop-off. We start way up top with a total population of roughly 146 crore people. From there, the working age population is about 99 to 100 crore. If we narrow it down to the estimated employed workforce, that drops to roughly 57 to 60 crore. Now, out of all those working people, over 8 crore filed returns. But when we look at who actually ends up paying income tax after all the deductions and exemptions, that number plummets to an estimated 2 to 3 crore people. So here is the absolute kicker. Only about 1.5 to 2% of the Indian population actually pays direct income tax, just around 2%. This tiny percentage is a huge narrative climax for us because it perfectly justifies why the government has to rely so heavily on indirect taxes for the other 40% of its tax revenue. I mean, if you can only directly tax 2% of your citizens, you literally have to find a way to generate revenue from the other 98% to keep the country running.
Which brings us perfectly to part 3, indirect taxes unpacked, the everyday tax. We're shifting our focus from the macro economy right down to the micro level, like the tax that kicks in when you buy a packet of biscuits or grab a cup of coffee.
Now, here is the precise textbook definition you are definitely going to want to memorize for those short answer exam questions. An indirect tax is a tax levied on goods and services rather than on income, featuring a shifted tax burden and broad coverage. Seriously, lock that phrasing into your brain. Levied on goods and services, shifted burden, broad coverage. It is all about taxing consumption, not earning. Let's fly through the 6 core characteristics of indirect taxes real quick. Number 1, a shifted burden. The shop owner technically pays the tax to the government, but they just shift that cost right onto you, the buyer. 2, it's on goods and services, so your movie tickets, your coffee. 3, it's already included in the final retail price you see on the sticker. 4, because it's built into the price, it is incredibly hard to avoid. 5, it has a wide reach, covering almost all everyday items, so pretty much the entire population is paying it. And 6, and this is arguably the most important for economic theory, it has a regressive nature. Let's really emphasize this real-world equity aspect for a second. Why exactly is an indirect tax called regressive? Well, unlike direct income tax, where a billionaire obviously pays a higher percentage than a junior employee, indirect tax is totally blind to your income. If a billionaire and a daily wage worker both walk into the exact same store and buy the exact same bar of soap, they both pay the exact same amount of GST on that soap. The tax naturally takes a much, much larger percentage of the poorer person's daily income, making the burden inherently regressive.
So what are the actual indirect taxes operating in India today? Treat this as your crucial checklist for exam prep. First up, the big one, GST, the Unified Goods and Services Tax that replaced the old VAT and service taxes. Second is customs duty, which is charged on imports and exports to regulate foreign trade. Third, we have central excise duty. This is a manufacturing tax that still applies to specific non-GST goods, like petroleum and tobacco. And fourth is stamp duty, a state-level tax paid on property purchases and legal agreements.
All right, let's bring it all together for part 4, the direct versus indirect showdown. Think of this as your ultimate exam prep. Consider this comparison your ultimate formatting guide for those long-form answers. Picture it. On one side, you've got direct tax. It's progressive, meaning higher earners pay more. It's paid straight to the government by the earner, and fundamentally, the burden cannot be shifted. You can't just ask your neighbor to pay your income tax for you. Then, on the other side, you have indirect tax. It is regressive, taxing everyone at the exact same rate, regardless of their wealth. It's paid by the final buyer through a middleman, like the retailer, and the burden intentionally shifts from the seller right onto you, the consumer.
So we've covered the billions in revenue, the 2% income tax reality, and the daily reality of shifted burdens. I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought to chew on as you study all this material. If 98% of the country doesn't pay direct income tax, the government absolutely needs indirect taxes to function, right? But knowing what we now know about its regressive nature, does charging everyone, rich and poor, the exact same tax rate on everyday goods create a truly fair economy? It's a fundamental question of fiscal policy, and honestly, it's exactly the kind of critical thinking that turns a good exam answer into a truly great one. Good luck studying, and thanks for exploring this explainer with me.